name is Ullas Samrat and I am a farmer. A farmer who has a bachelor's degree in economics, a farmer who went to a media school to study journalism, who had a successful exit from a content management startup at the age of 23, a farmer who dares to run an electronics startup without an engineer's degree. So I guess I'm also an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur who is auditioning for roles in between investor calls and vendor meetings because that's what he actually wants to do. That's what gives his life purpose. So I guess I'm not just a farmer or an entrepreneur, I'm also an actor. An actor who runs one of the leading precision farming startups in the world with absolutely no prior experience in farming. I know it's exhausting. Full disclosure, I don't come from a family of farmers or engineers or communication experts or media veterans. I do come from an incredible supportive family though, so that makes life easier. But other than that, I don't have the privilege to lean on their connections. And yet somehow, I made it to the Forbes under 30 lists. I work with the UN in helping frame policies that have a real world impact. One of my startups, Titan Foodworks, recently made it to the Food Tech 500 list, which is like a big deal in the global food space. But since you're not a food tech geek and you don't know about it, and nor do you care about it. So the question is, how does a dyslexic kid from northwest Delhi get to achieve all this? These things are usually reserved for South Delhi kids or Bombay kids or Bangalore kids, the cool kids. For people like me, the standard path is an engineer's degree followed by an MBA that leads to a massive student loan, which pushes you to take up a fat-paying job to pay that loan off, and quickly follow that up with a wedding, home loans, car loans, more EMIs, kids, schools, morning walks, heart attack, the usual. We don't get to go to Hong Kong for a Forbes under 30 summit or to Paris for a UN conference to present our ideas about policy making. So how did I get to skip all of this and still turn out okay? And I attribute all of this to the fact, and I quote my class 10th class teacher here, that I'm too thick-headed. I'm too thick-headed to understand what people around me have been trying to drill into me ever since forever. He obviously didn't mean it as a compliment, but I'm too thick-headed to get that. I let that define me, make me into who I am today, who I will be forever. Now, this concept that he said I was too thick-headed to understand or accept was that there is somehow this limit, this upper cap to what I can be and achieve, this idea that I cannot possibly try and successfully be multiple things in one lifetime and be any good at any of them. This bizarre concept that I must finalize today what my life will be 50 years from today. You get why I have a difficult time wrapping my head around this concept, right? How this grossly underestimates the length of a lifetime. How this downplays and degrades the number of productive years we will spend in this vehicle we're born into, right? How this restrictive thinking is a disrespect to everything that makes us human. People literally since the beginning of time have been doing whatever they can to get a better mileage out of this, the human body. And we are limiting ourselves because someone in the position of power has made a sweeping generalization about people, and we all must comply. Because the generation above us did not have the luxury to learn and evolve during their lifetime, to update themselves to better versions of themselves before the end of their life cycle. So we must too. Then what was the point of all their sacrifices, all the pains they took to get us to where we are? No, I reject this nauseatingly limited thinking. I always have and I always will. Yes, I'm too thick-headed because I can't really grasp this concept. I mean, we're all anyway running against the clock here, experiencing things in this decaying organic matter, and I refuse to supplement that with this decaying, depressing thought process. Is it really too out of this world crazy to say that you can and you must reinvent yourself every 10 years or so, doing multiple things, when it On an average, it just takes 3 years to graduate in any subject matter under the sun. Now, there is solid evidence that proves that jack of all trades is a better choice than the master of one. This is what experts call transferring. Elon Musk is probably the most famous example who uses this technique and now dominates the world. Roger Federer is another. He did not zero in on tennis till his teens. He was sampling other sports, ranging from wrestling to football, before he finally turned pro. Now, people like Elon Musk or Roger Federer operate in what experts called wicked learning environments. This is a new concept, so I need you to focus. Right? These wicked learning environments are environments where things happen on the fly and we must respond with speed. We have to solve problems we haven't seen before. We have to take skills and knowledge and apply them to situations we haven't experienced before. Wicked learning environments. Or, as you would know it, life. Now, don't take me wrong, we do need specialists. Like, we will need them for a few more years at least. But it is far easier to replace a specialist with a few thousand lines of code than it is to replace a generalist. And it's only going to get easier. If you honestly believe that your specialty today will be relevant 20 years from now, well, you get no points for guessing who is being too thick-headed here. The only thing that blinds us to this universal, irrefutable, absolute truth is our fear, disguised as ego. Ego that makes us incapable of differentiating between the sinister plot we run in our heads and the plot that's unfolding in front of us. We are all hardwired to be generalists, to do multiple things, to be multiple personas. It is this ego that makes us stop and focus on that one thing. It is our parents' egos that tell us, ये guitar छोड़ो, तुम्हारी 10th है, अब focus कर लो. And then we spend our entire life focusing until a genius comes along and writes a little program that leaves our area of focus redundant. It is this ego or conditioning or practicality, whatever you want to call it, that kills that genius that each one of us carries. The one who wanted to be a cricket-playing astronaut who would perform brain transplant on dolphins on Pluto one day. All of those things, mind you, not just one of those. And I truly believe that the purpose of all our lives must be to make sure that that genius in us remains alive and kicking forever. I'm grossly unqualified to tell you what you should be doing with your life. I still haven't raised funding for any of my startups. Or you don't see my face plastered all around the internet trying to coax you into buying stuff you don't really need. So I can only share what I do with mine, with the hope that this plants a seed somewhere deep inside of you, a seed that can take root and flourish. I am, after all, a farmer. And for that, I want to tell you about a 15-year-old dyslexic kid. This kid who is winging it every day and failing at it. He was written off by his teachers for being no good at all. Was never picked for any team sports by his friends also. He literally had to beg to be part of even the Kho team at school, and he would still just make it to the bench. Never the starting 11. This kid who was dragged off stage while dancing and then counseled for having radical ideas. This 15-year-old who found peace and purpose only when he was acting, but he had to give that dream up because, life needs focus. Now, this kid, during the darkest phase of his life, wrote a list of things he wanted to do and be in his lifetime. Now, this was a crazy list, impossible, outlandish stuff, but they didn't seem crazy to him. He wrote them down because he was too thick-headed to grasp that none of these things are supposed to happen in real life, let alone all of them. He wanted it out of his system and in a tangible form that he could hold and see. He listed things like owning his own football team, becoming one of the greatest actors this country has ever seen, wanting to be a writer, working with the UN, building an electronics consumer brand, growing food at his own farm. I'd say that kid has managed to tick off about 70% of that list. and he's working every day to take the remaining items off of it. And it is my full-time job to make sure that that kid is alive and kicking every day. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that at the end of the day, you're accountable only to yourself. There are too many obstacles in your way already, so just don't be one of them. Be too thick-headed to accept that चीजें ऐसे ही होती हैं, or some random redundant shit like जितनी चादर है पैर उतने ही फैलाओ. And maybe one day a 22-year-old somewhere will read up about you and find you interesting enough to listen to what you have to say. Maybe one day you get a crazy opportunity to make a tiny dent in the universe because you refuse to be anything other than you. Thank you.